Bethesda is one of those studios that bucks the trend in the gaming industry. This team is known for two huge franchises which have had both great success and recently catastrophic failure. Headed by the legendary developer Todd Howard, this team has pioneered the Western RPG all the way up until their 2011 release Skyrim. After this, however, the rest of the world caught up, and in this video I intend to look back at why that happened and what Bethesda need to do to get back to the pinnacle of the gaming sphere. Founded way back in 1985, Bethesda released several Terminator games, amongst others up until '93, when they released The Elder Scrolls Arena. The game was a first-person RPG and featured many side quests along with an open-ended world called Tamriel. Three years later, they released The Elder Scrolls II: Daggerfall. This sequel took the first game and made everything bigger, and I really mean bigger. The map is 62,394 square miles, making it still one of the biggest game worlds ever created, with over 750,000 NPCs and a completely open-ended plot. The game did have its problems because of this, however, as a lot of dungeons and cities felt very similar to each other as they were mostly procedurally generated. A lot of these issues were solved, however, in 2002 when the third Elder Scrolls was released, called Morrowind. The game world was much smaller while still being large and very detailed without procedurally generated areas. Once again, the game was open-ended with a main quest line as well as side quests, but had a much larger focus on combat. This made for a sort of game people hadn't really seen before and won many Game of the Years. Of course, development on the next title started right away, and just 4 years later, in 2006, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion released. This game wowed critics and gamers alike with a beautiful world, great story, and good gameplay. By this point, Bethesda were on a roll, and that would continue to the next generation, and a new acquisition by the studio to put it on the map. Bethesda bought the rights to the Fallout IP and started work on a new game in 2004. Full development didn't start until after Oblivion came out, however. Fallout 3 was originally developed by Black Isle Studios, who created the original 2 games for Interplay, but when Interplay went bankrupt, ZeniMax, who owned Bethesda, jumped at the chance under the advice and desire of Todd Howard. When Fallout 3 released in 2008, it was groundbreaking and won countless Game of the Year awards. Bethesda showed they could make something big that wasn't a fantasy game, but not only that, it put them on the map. 3 years later, Bethesda returned to Tamriel with The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim. Arguably their best game to date, Bethesda has gone on to release and re-release the game on literally everything they possibly can. This was the first truly mainstream Elder Scrolls game and really put Bethesda at the top. So at this point you think Bethesda can't do any wrong and are at the very top of the industry, but things started to go slightly off course with the new generations of consoles. In 2015, Bethesda announced they were going to host their very own showcase at E3, and it was mainly to announce one thing: Fallout 4. This was one of those great E3 moments where the game was announced and released in the same year, and it was huge. Fallout 4 was everything Todd Howard and the team wanted Fallout 3 to be. It was big and had branching storylines and was better than the last couple of games they did. This is where the problem started, however, and is also a problem going forward into their latest game and the ones in the future. As far as graphics go, Fallout 4 looked good, but was well outclassed by other open world games at the time, with the likes of Grand Theft Auto 5 and even Watch Dogs looking better, and that's without even mentioning The Witcher 3 developed by CD Projekt Red. That game was a technical marvel and was also so far ahead of every other open world game it was just embarrassing for everyone else. This doesn't mean that Fallout 4 was a bad game, as it was the complete opposite. The story and the world Bethesda built was incredible. They even improved on the combat and added a settlement builder which allowed players to build seriously impressive camps. The problem wasn't that the game wasn't as good as The Witcher, but that the next Elder Scrolls wouldn't be unless something seriously changed. One problem is Bethesda only had a small team to make it, whereas other studios had literally hundreds and hundreds of developers. This means Bethesda staff complete a wide range of tasks rather than just focusing on details, but it does mean everyone works off the same page and really understands what they're trying to do. Since Fallout 4 release, the team has grown, so this problem might have been sorted as a new studio has been opened in Austin, Texas. This isn't the only problem, however, as Bethesda have become very well known for one of the worst things about games: bugs. Bethesda's game engine is seriously buggy, with some hilarious results and unfortunately many crashes. When looking at Bethesda's next big game, Starfield, it's important not to only look at Fallout 76 too much, as that was more of a multiplayer experiment than a standard Bethesda game. So disregarding that game, it seems clear what the team need to improve on, and yet in reality it's incredibly complicated. You see, if they simply improve on the graphics and fix the bugs, then this team loses what makes it special. They're known for trying different things and being at the forefront of the games industry, so Starfield needs to be something more. Take a look at Cyberpunk 2077 that's coming out in early 2020. This game is made by CD Projekt Red, and once again could end up embarrassing other developers, as the gameplay demos we've seen make this game look like it's from 2025, not 2020. This doesn't mean Bethesda needs to copy CD Projekt Red or even better them, it just means they need to try and do something different. Something to set it apart, something with that wow effect of fighting a dragon in Skyrim or walking out of Vault 101 in Fallout 3. Now with the game being a sci-fi, there's every possibility we'll get at least one moment like that, but that's not all it needs. The chances are there's going to be some shooting, so that really needs improving. You can't keep hiding behind VATs like in Fallout, so maybe they need to look at how other games do their shooting. Now I don't mean they need to go full realistic like Call of Duty or Rainbow Six, and they don't need to go full arcade style like you get in games like Apex Legends. Maybe go somewhere in the middle that feels nice, something like what Ubisoft does with the Far Cry games, where the guns actually feel weighty and aiming feels useful rather than just shooting randomly from the hip all the time. On top of this, the AI needs some work, as in past Bethesda games enemies just tend to run at you shooting without thinking about the environment around them at all. This works for wildlife like deathclaws and mole rats, but not for humans, as they would try and not get themselves killed by maybe taking cover or flanking. Many games have now got this right, with cover-based shooting becoming the norm, but for some reason in Bethesda games, that's just not the case at all. Of course, the combat is still challenging thanks to the leveling system that you get in RPGs, but that tends to just mean enemies take more bullets and do more damage, so there's no tactics involved apart from having the bigger gun and the better stats. With the combat out of the way, let's have a look at when things get a little bit quieter. Back in Fallout 3, every NPC had a voice, but they were only split between about 35 people, and some only taking a single character. This meant an awful lot of NPCs sounded exactly the same, with some bad voice acting to boot. They tried to fix this in Fallout 4 with much more dialogue and actors, but you still got a lot of generic NPCs sounding the same, and in the same drab way. This really needs improving to help sell the world and get players immersed in what is bound to be a great Bethesda story. As far as their storytelling goes, Bethesda doesn't have any worry at all. They use world storytelling, meaning that players who explore properly get much more from the world. This is really shown best in Fallout 4, where reading the various computers and even just looking around at various assets left around the world can tell very personal and in some cases hilarious stories, which give you a better understanding of life in the world they created. Of course, there's one thing that Bethesda really could improve with their worlds, and that is loading times. Now, with Starfield being confirmed as a next-gen title, this could be a thing of the past, but this is something only time will tell. Apart from this, the world will need to be more dense, as a sci-fi setting doesn't normally accompany an empty wasteland or vast wilderness that Bethesda is known with their Fallout and Elder Scrolls franchises. All in all, Bethesda has everything in its arsenal to create something special with Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6 when they eventually come out, but with games like Cyberpunk 2077 coming out before them, they have an awful lot of work on their hands, and I have every bit of confidence in them. But only time will tell if this once great studio can come back to the top and once again be the benchmark. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Jack, and this has been Games to You.